Hello there, YouTube world. It's been a whirlwind of adventure, so I figured this would be a good place for me to kind of say my goodbyes. And I barely made it to this campground. This is Collier Seminole campground. This is one of the boardwalks. Well, actually, the only boardwalk. Now that I think about it, there used to be like one and a half, but that one got damaged in the hurricane, and then they only rebuilt this one. Whatever. So my RV had issues on the way here. Nothing quite puts the kibosh on your vacation plans when your RV just flat out stalls on the highway. I've discovered a problem. Now, this problem has persisted for quite some time. On my first trip to the Keys last year in that RV, my sister and I took it, ironically, to Everglades, which is where I'm at right now, and we found, unfortunately, that my terminals were loose, and that's why it was constantly cutting out, just flat out cutting out. But I think the issue hasn't been resolved after we resolved that issue. Now that I've had a little bit of experience post that repair, if you want to call it that, the problem came back. So what's happening is when you run the generator and you run the RV at the same time, works. You shut off the RV, you let the generator run, like let's say I'm going hiking and leave AC for the cat and everything. Come back, RV starts, or it doesn't start, either or. And then like a couple hundred feet after that, it just dies. And the only way to make it work is to completely shut down the generator and by rocking the RV. So once I get back, I'm gonna have to figure out whether it's a fuel pump issue, whether it's a clogged fuel line or clogged fuel filter or something like that. So I'm glad that this happened on the last day. I had a bit of a hiccup in Key West. As I was traveling around Key West in the daytime, I came back, I had same exact issue. Didn't dawn at me at the time because it cranked right back up, but I got stuck right on the corner of Duval and whatever that street is. So here I am, enjoying this little boardwalk that they've rebuilt. This leads you through the hammock. I guess I should mention that this type of habitat is quite unique for this specific environment. This is not like in the Keys. You see a lot of foreign-looking things, and this up here is pretty much almost entirely and perpetually flooded. Certainly by the coastal tides. Coming in, but also the storms that come through. So if you look down, which my camera is not going to let me, there's water everywhere, and that's the reason why there's boardwalk. I'm still getting the hang of this gimbal thing. After destroying my old one on the last trip. So it is really cool though. Look at that. Has a very tropical vibe to it. I actually like it. It's something new, something that I haven't seen before. Certainly not in abundance. And the great thing is, I guess now would be a good segue to talk about it. There's a place north of Naples, sort of south of Fort Myers. It is called Corkscrew Sanctuary, where they charge you exuberant amount of money to be able to go and enjoy the boardwalk by kicking you out like 2 hours before they close. You know, if you're going to the Keys, it's almost a crime not to stop in Seminole Collier State Park. You could pretty much skip that corkscrew thing entirely, and as far as I'm concerned, they could go and screw themselves. Last year, my sister and I pulled up at 4:15, and I actually left them a very angry review on the website and on Google Maps and anywhere else where I could possibly, simply because they wouldn't let us in, despite the fact that park was closing much later. So there's that. But this place up here, for the entry fee, even if you're not like camping in the park, for the entry to the state park, which is like a couple of bucks, this is gorgeous. What a cool spot. And you know, you could actually park your RV on the parking lot and just walk. This only takes you like, I don't know, 20-30 minutes, but enough to stretch your bones and things like that. And then eventually the boardwalk ends and it leads you on this pathway. And this whole thing is actually a loop. There's a second component which I started on, but it looks very similar. Be wary, obviously, of the crocodiles, alligators, snakes, Sasquatch, just about anything that could possibly eat you. This being the middle of angry beavers, if there's any zombie beavers. Yeah, folks, this is it. This is what Everglades actually is. Just this impenetrable jungle of this mishmash of all sorts of different ecosystems, which makes it ever so perfect for a wide range of species that could be found all through the Everglades. Everglades is not just swamp, it's uplands and wetlands and lakes and certainly water management areas, which is a bit of a human design. But this is what wild Florida actually looks like. Although when you look at the trees and you look at stuff like this is bad juju for the plants. That's a species, I don't know what specifically that is, but it's a part of that air potato plant thing, which consumes everything that it grows on. It starves it of sunlight, and then the thing dies. You can actually see it in action right now. It just weaves itself all around. You could hardly get rid of it. They do have either Chinese or Japanese potato beetles or something of this sort. Oh look, a bee. Be kind to the bees. Oh, there's a whole bunch of bees here. And those are like BBs. I don't know if they're Africanized, because we do have them here in Florida. But either way, they're just doing what bees do, and we're gonna let them be. Now I just noticed something. They even have, I keep calling them iron tree. The actual name for that tree is called Gumbo Limbo, also known as the Taurus tree. Although to me, iron tree sounds cooler, if I say so myself. I think they have a placard up here, but that's the other way to get into the boardwalk. It starts here and then kind of goes on a loop. Eventually takes you to observation platform from which you can't really see anything. Oh, and another thing is, just like elsewhere in Florida, this is a toppled tree. You could see how, in a very typical fashion, Florida soil is just absolutely pathetic, which is why the trees just fall. Very common here in Florida. Look at this palm tree. That is a really interesting palm tree. Here, let me see if the camera can pick this up. Have a look at that. Come on, there we go. Hey, I'm getting better with this gimbal thing. This thing almost looks like it's made of concrete. Just look how, as a matter of fact, I would have to wager. I'm gonna try and put my hand on it. I would have to wager that this is literally the thickest palm tree I have ever seen, period, bar none. I have never seen a bigger, thicker palm tree ever. In all of my travels around Caribbean, I have, like, legitimately never. Because, you know, normally palm trees are like this. This one is big, 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 big. And considering its poor root system, I'm actually surprised it got this big. Another thing that Florida has a lot of, they call them airplanes. This is just a very typical example of it. They lodge themselves just about anywhere, and then Spanish moth starts growing out of them. So long term, this isn't actually all too good for the tree, but it does look awfully pretty. They also bloom. They have really pretty flowers. If you look some of my Highlands hammock videos, you could see, because I caught them right in their bloom season. What a cool little trail. I'm so happy they reopened it, because it was still very much closed last time. Here you can see the roots. They're all lateral. Again, because of the poor soil structure. Oh, here's another really big palm tree. It's almost hard to believe that it is a palm tree. You know, I do a lot of volunteering with the kids. Mainly 3rd graders, 4th graders, part of the education program outreach, where we educate the younglings about things like this. And I can only wish that we had this where I teach them, because our park, not exactly the best. But this is a nice little trail. Very pleasant surprise, you know, especially after driving. One thing I've learned on this trip, well, actually all the trips for that matter, but one thing that I'm trying my best to do is to minimize the amount of driving, because it just sucks the enjoyment out of you. By the time you get there, you're so deflated. So, and you know, you're always gonna hear people be like, oh, well, I drive 12 hours in a trip. You know, it's not worth it, seriously. If you... What? Is this even real? Oh my goodness. Look at this thing. Look at this thing. Yes, my that is very much. You know, I thought that the palm tree that was over there was the biggest I've ever seen. I retract that statement, and this up here is the biggest palm tree that I've seen. Oh my goodness, I wonder how old this is. I reckon it's probably, oh, look at this, there's another gumbo limbo. I reckon there must be a way to be able to count or figure out how old the palm tree is. You know, unlike the typical tree that has the rings on it, the structure of the palm is vertical, sort of aligned fibers, which allows them to bend, you know, in the high winds and everything like that. So, but they don't develop that same concentric. If you look, this is the fallen palm tree. See how it's all fibery, sort of ish. So it's going to be virtually impossible to count tree rings that way. I'm gonna look it up, and you'll learn how to identify the age of the palm trees in one of my future videos, that's for sure. I know what you guys thinking. What the hell am I doing here? What happened to the mountains of North and South Carolina, Asheville, and all that stuff? That is a long story that I don't even know where to begin. That whole exercise, I've lost a lot of money on canceled reservations between the 2 hurricanes and plus a remnant 3rd hurricane, and no leaf coverage, etc., etc. So I ended up actually going to South Florida. Right now I'm in Everglades, and I'm wanting to take you along for the journey. So as always, Everglades is one of those places where it is always windy. Oh my goodness, I don't think I've ever been out here where it wasn't blowing 20 or 30 miles an hour. Another concept of Everglades, oh, here's one of the viewing platforms. Another concept of the Everglades is that people are a little bit, well, misguided, let's put it that way, with this whole Everglades thing. Because technically, Everglades National Park is a lot smaller than the general area. RV is a lot smaller than what normal people think Everglades is. And the reason for that is because majority of the Everglades, believe it or not, are actually a water management area. And so what I wanted to show you guys, a clear example of what water management area is. If you notice, right behind me there's a bit of a current. And so the wind is actually coming from there. The water is actually flowing from north to south as part of the lock system and everything like that. And the reason why they do that is, I'm sure you guys heard about red tide and Lake Okeechobee and everything like that. So they try and mitigate for flooding. If it wasn't for a system of all of this, places like Miami wouldn't exist to begin with, because all of this area would be nothing but a swamp, perpetually flooded. And so they typically redirect Okeechobee to other places, and Okeechobee is not an actual lake, despite the fact that everybody calls it Lake Okeechobee. So I chose this specific place because it kind of tells the picture and tells the story, as well as also a memorial. Everglades actually has a very dark chapter. I'm gonna take you there in just a little bit. There was a plane accident some years ago where a lot of people died, and there's a monument addressed to that. So right behind me is the typical sawgrass that comprises typical Everglades. Everglades is actually a diverse ecosystem filled with anything from wetland species to upland hammocks, creating a perfect habitat for everybody and everybody. We got a couple of cormorants just sitting there parked. So take a look at this. Right, this being the management area. Here you can see the elevation gauge, and there's a buoy that controls the mechanism, and there's quite a bit of a current, actually a lot of bit of a current. And what happens is, this is a lock that channels the water from that side off to this side on a rather tumultuous journey. And here you could actually see, look at that, look how swift the current is. You would never picture that here in Florida you'd find the rapids like this. And you know, because whenever people think of Everglades, they always think of like a swampy type habitat, but it's anything but. And so system of locks, even if you're driving down this Highway 41, which kind of goes from Miami that way to Naples, each channel lock releases just the right amount of water, and water gets left to right and north to south, so you're going to see a lot of the infrastructure as you're driving down the road. Highway 41 is probably best suited for sightseeing like that, because Highway 75, which is the interstate, doesn't can't really stop anywhere. Another thing I want to cover is that if you have this grandeur aspiration of visiting Everglades, this is what Everglades actually is. Okay, so the touristy spots, you know, all the Indian reservations and everything, that's kind of like a touristy trap. And majority of Everglades is exactly this. You're just driving on the highway, and maybe every once in a while, like you can see over there on the other side, there's like a little pull out where you could look at the water. There's fields and things. So technically everything that's on the westmost boundary of Everglades is this. If in case you're looking for like spectacular scenery and everything like that, you would have to go either to the actual Everglades National Park, which in my opinion I would rate it like a 3 out of 10, to be honest, and probably because I'm too spoiled by visiting a whole bunch of places. There's far better options. But if you take this very Highway 41 and go to the Loop Road, which is the washboard, the scenery there is just totally worth it. Now, in my opinion, the best Everglades are actually towards Naples, over by Collier State Park, because there you could actually pull off and actually see a lot more. And I just think it's not managed by all the infrastructure and everything, so it's just more pleasing to the eye. Now folks, I drove by this monument I don't know how many times over the years, and you know, unfortunately this memorial just gets overlooked. Most people have never even heard of an airplane crash out here in the Everglades. It's very sad. Most people, you know, traveling on the road right behind me have no idea that this is here. So I wanted to take you on this trip. I believe there's a correlation between the number of blocks and the number of people that died, or something to do with that. There you go, guys. Here you could see a little memorial plaque with all the names of very unfortunate souls that got who perished. It's flight 592 if you want to do a little bit of research on it. May 11, 1996. Now, in what I know, and I don't want to be misquoted. Whoops. I don't want to be misquoted, so I'm just gonna tell you how I know the story. The company that flies, or that flew out here in Everglades, apparently had a very poor safety rating, and they've been cited in the past for multiple violations, and it just kind of kept happening, and I think there was something about falsifying reports or something like that. And so the company eventually went belly up. Somebody bought it, and the other company didn't upkeep it or something like that. They didn't want to invest into safety measures and improvement, and so they apparently tried to write it off or something like that. And eventually all of this gobbledygook has caught up with a very unfortunate group of people that got caught in all of this. There was a very lengthy lawsuit, and you know how those are. The only ones that benefit are the lawyers. So, but the very unfortunate part about it is that people have lost their lives out here in Everglades. And this is it. I wanted to visit this for many years, but I just couldn't find the right time and the right moment to talk about it in the right context.